going to be designing our paper airplane. I'm super excited about this project. You guys need to bear with me. This is the first time I'm doing it with no practice run, so we'll see how it goes. I want you guys to open up a new document in Illustrator. So create new. When you set this up, I want you to choose print. We will be printing these out so you can have your paper airplane race. I want you to name it with your first name, underscore, pattern. This is your pattern project. And now change the points to inches. And this is going to be a standard 8.5 by 11, and we want it to be vertical. Okay? So this is really important. When I print it, it's going to be on standard 8.5 by 11 paper. So make sure you set your page, your artboard up to the correct size. Go ahead and say create. So there's a couple new things we're going to be learning in this project. So first of all, you should have already made your paper airplane. You should have already created the diagram of how it works and where you're going to be designing. Saved it to Teams, and now make sure it's downloaded to your computer, and then we are going to place it in our document. So you're going to go to File, Place. I'm going to go to Downloads. I just downloaded mine. And I'm going to place. Once again, don't just click. It's going to be the size of the document. It might not be the right size, but if you click and hold your mouse down and drag, you can place it right where you want it on the document. So I'm going to go ahead and center mine up. Once it's centered and I'm happy with where it's at, there we go. All right. Oh, come on. Every time I get it and let go, it doesn't want to do it. Okay, so this is a very important step. You guys already know how to use your layers. We're going to go to our layers window, and we are going to make sure we lock this layer, and we'll name this template. This is going to be our template. We're going to not need it later on, but right now we need it. So once our template's there, we need to add a new layer. So next we are going to do our folding line. So let's name this layer folds. So now what I want you guys to do for this, we're going to do our center fold, and I'm going to do all the folds on one side, but your plane should be symmetrical. So once you have everything down on one side, we can just copy, reflect it, and put it on the other. So we're going to use our line segment tool for this project. So we're going to go ahead and drag a line straight down, and to have it completely straight. So I might not have it straight by eyeballing it. If you hold down Shift, it will straighten that line straight up for you, and let go, and there's our line. We can't see it. We don't have a stroke on it. Lines are primarily strokes, so let's go ahead and we're going to add a stroke to that. For the sake of being able to see it, I'm going to change that stroke color to red so we can see it popping off of that background. And then this is going to be my cut line, or my fold line. So what I want you to do for the fold lines is let's go ahead and click on the stroke over here in the preference panel. And I'm going to say I want it to be a dashed line. So here's a dashed line. You have options on how many points the dashes are, how many gaps, and you can do some changes there. But for now, I'm just going to go with the default. So let's look at our layer panel and turn off that template layer, and you can get an idea of where we're at right now. So that's going to be a fold line. Next, let's go ahead and do another line. So let's do the next one, and this one is not going to be straight, so I'm not going to use my Shift tool, and I'm going to get that second line in there. Okay, get this third line in here, and I'm just simply dragging over each fold line in my template. They're all dashed because we have it set up on a dash on the first one. This one's going to be straight, so I'm going to hold down my Shift key to straighten that out. Oh, I let off my Shift key too we go. And you can see my paper was not straight. There we go. And we've got one right here. All right, I think I have all of my lines. So I'm going to go to my selection tool and select over all of them except for the center line. I'm going to do Control C and Control V as in Victor, Command or Control. And now I'm going to go to Object, Transform, Reflect, and we want to reflect it vertically. See here, and say OK. And now let's bring that into place over here. Make sure we're lined up perfectly. And now we have our lines. So we've got our folds. I'm going to go ahead and lock that fold line layer and add one more layer. And here is our design. So we're going to design our planes before we print them and fly them. So notice I'm going to design in this section here, this section, this section, and this section. But I have, once again, it's symmetrical. So we're going to go to our pen tool. And I'm going to start up at the top, and I basically can go right over those fold lines. I'm drawing in my box. There's one. I'm going to rotate the color so you can see what's going on here. Let's go to our pen tool and let's get this other design box that I'm going to do. And all I'm simply doing with the pen tool is clicking. We don't have any curves on our plane, so it's all straight lines. So we're just clicking and clicking at each point. Now I'm going to go ahead and select these three pieces. We've got our bottom two layers locked, so we don't have to worry about messing with them. Control or Command C and then Control or Command V. Object, Transform, Reflect. And we're going to say vertically, yes. And let's move that into place. All right. So this is the area we're going to be designing. So there's a few things we can do. One thing is this assignment has to do with pattern. So I want to show you how you can add a pattern to this area. So I just clicked on my section. I want to make sure fill box is on top. And then I'm going to go over to my swatch menu and we're going to pull some swatches, or some patterns. So we've got a couple here that are already just the default. There's a couple patterns there. Or we can go to the little hamburger menu on the top right, go down to Open Swatch Library, and we've got a lot of swatches here that we can look at. But if we go down to Patterns, there's Basic, Graphics, we have Decorative, and then we have Nature. So you can go with a couple of the defaults that they have, and you can go through and see if there's any that you like. So that's up to you. Or you can also go back up to swatches. We can, if you designed your own, if you watched the previous video, you designed your own pattern, you can go up to, once again, the hamburger, Open Swatch Library, User Defined, and pull in the custom swatches. And there's your swatch that you designed. So let's go ahead and choose that design. So we just put in our Among Us characters. So, but one thing is with Among Us characters and some of the other patterns that you might be working with, it's not going the direction that we want it to go. If we go back to the layers and we close off these two layers, notice with this area, this is the top up here. So the Among Us characters are kind of going all kinds of sideways, right? So they're not going the right direction. So we can select this box and we can go to our rotate tool. So if we double click on that rotate, it is already on preview, so it's showing you it's rotating the whole thing. We don't want to rotate the object, we just want to transform the pattern within. So let's click off the object, and now you can see our pattern changed in the direction we want it to go. So it was already set for 90. It already changed the direction I need it. The other boxes, we might need to change the direction a little bit. So you can play around with the degree and the angle and then say okay when it's where you want it. Next thing we can do, we can go back to our selection tool. We have this box selected, and then maybe I want my Among Us characters to be smaller. So right next to our rotate tool, there is a scale tool. So if we double click on our scale tool, we can make sure we got the preview checked already. So it's showing us already that it scaled it to 50%, which is what was the last thing I did there. So that's there. But make sure that only the transform the patterns option is there. So you can play around with the scale and see what you're liking. So I think 25 might be a little too small. I feel like 50 was too big. So let's try 40. Yeah, I'm liking 40. So I'm gonna stick with 40 for now. But you play around with your scale, see how you want that Among Us character to be inside, and say okay. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and go to my other shape. And I'm going to go back and choose my pattern, swatches, choose my Among Us. And then this time, if you notice the arrow, you can kind of see the arrow back here, but I'll turn off my my preview on these. So you can see the arrow's pointing up to that top corner up there. So I need to kind of move my Among Us characters in a way that their heads are up here and their feet are down this way. So let's go ahead with that box selected. We're going to go back to our rotate tool and double click, and it's already still. I'm just transferring the pattern. It went at 90 degrees right now. Let's go ahead and say, let's go back to 0, and I want to see where I'm at there. And then I think I want to go this way. I'm not good at math, you guys, so I've got to kind of figure it out. Let's go 170 and see how we're looking there. Oh, wrong way. I wonder if we could just, might have just figured something out. So we can actually just rotate this around. So that makes it a lot easier. All right, so I rotated it in the angle area to where it needs to be. I like that. I'm gonna say okay, but I do want to scale it down. So once again, go to my selection tool, select that box, go to our scale tool, double click, and our previous one is already there. So if that's what we want to say okay, we can go ahead and do that. And lastly, for this one, let's go ahead and go. I selected this little corner back here. And let's see, I might want to just change the color of that to the oh, it did my pattern. So I used my eyedropper tool. It picked the pattern. I was wanting just to do the color. So let's go ahead and say I don't want that pattern in there right now. So I'm going to, just for the sake of time for this video, I'm going to kind of eyeball the color that I want. So I could go and get the hex code. You guys already know how to do that. I'm just trying to kind of get close to the color I want. Say okay. And that's not quite where I want, a little bit more green. There we go. So instead of having to redo the same thing over here, we could go ahead, if we want this side to be the same as this side, we could go ahead and delete these, copy them, reflect them, put them over here. The thing is, if you do want this side to be different than that, then go ahead and decorate these boxes. I do want to put something in here before I do anything, but notice that my arrow is going that way. So I might want to do, I'm going to add some text. Let's go over here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to name this plain. I'm going to name this plain 2 for 2 imposters. All right, and so let's go ahead. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. You can change the font over in our character panel. think that a little bit thicker we'll go with. Like that. I want to make sure this is white. Okay. And now I'm going to rotate this around. And bring it in here. I'm just using my arrow keys to kind of get him in there. Good. So now before I do anything else, I do want mine to be symmetrical. So I'm going to delete those that we copied earlier and now copy these pieces and object, transform, reflect, and say okay, move them into place. So now we have our airplane. So there's a couple things before you save this, before you send it in for grading. We do not want that template in the back. So you notice that we've got some of the desk in there. You might have wrinkles. You might have different things in there. We do not want. So take that off. Take the eyedropper off. We can even slide that to the trash can now and say we don't want that background. So the next part is it's completely up to you whether you want the folds in there or not. If you don't want the folds in there, you can take the eyedropper off if you know that you're playing well enough to just redo those folds. I would highly suggest lock the design layer, unlock your fold layer. Let's not do a bright red unless it goes well with your design. Let's go ahead and make this like a soft gray. And bring the stroke down just a tad. So I'm bringing it down. I think even to 2 might be good. So here it's not as distracting away from my design. I could still go ahead and select them all and even go down to 1 and maybe even go just a tad lighter on the gray. And so my fold lines are there, but they're not so in your face and distracting from the design of my airplane. So lastly, before I show you how to save it, if there's anything else you want to do, things that you know how to do, you can add a box over your pattern. You can put words in there. Have fun with your design. I can't wait to see what you create. I do want to make sure that you're knowing how to add pattern to your project. So when you save, go to Save, File, Save As. Make sure your name is correct. You did in the beginning. You tell it where you want it to go. So I've got mine on my external hard drive, and I've put it in a certain place. Pattern we're working on, and you're saving it as an AI. So go ahead and save. Say OK. Next, what you need to do, you need to go to File, Export, Export As. This time you're exporting it as a, making sure it's in the same place. For the sake of printing, I want you to save it as, First save it as a JPEG, say use artboards, and then let's go ahead and export it. Make sure the quality is at 10 and it's at medium. Say okay. You're going to put this JPEG in Teams for me to see. And then let's go to File, Save As, and we're going to save it one more way for me to print. So make sure everything's correct. Go to Format, and you're going to choose the Adobe PDF. It's about halfway down. And then save. The default settings are okay, so go ahead and save PDF. Make sure that you've uploaded the JPEG and the PDF to Teams in your new class notebook page in the 3rd quarter titled Patterns. And so the JPEG will give me a way to see it quickly to grade, and the PDF will allow me to I'm getting a lot of notifications. Allow me to print it for you so then you can compete in the contest for who can fly their plane the farthest. I'm super excited about this project. I hope you guys have fun. Can't wait to see what you create.